Perfect. So, inspiration for this is a sort of the idea of giving a talk at last conference, which is happening next Friday, at Abbotsford Convent. So just want to sort of, and by the way, I have a 30% discount code. If anyone wants to hit me up afterwards, I'll give you a 30% discount code. And so this is me trying to cut 40 minutes down into 15 minutes, and I hope that I do it. Oops. So let me just, so the context behind this is that, scaled agile. How many of the folks in the room have been involved in a scaled agile project of any form? Okay, there's 1, 2, and I don't know on the live stream. Hopefully there's some people. I think we have a sort of a love-hate relationship, or maybe a hate relationship, but whatever. I love with scaled agile. You know, on one hand, there are a bunch of principles and values that were defined in the Agile Manifesto. Sometimes some of us reference them, often we don't. But I think they sort of, the idea of delivering working code as a proof of value is sort of very much built into a lot of the way that devs work, and we really value that within the Agile community. Equally well on the scaled Agile or the various scaling frameworks, and SAFe is just one of them, of course. There is this sort of heaps of structure that comes into scaled Agile, and often the structure tends to obstruct the way we go about our values. And the point I want to make with this slide is really just that when you've got behavior and structure, meeting in the middle and clashing, it's quite often one of them has to give. And sometimes it's behavior, sometimes it's the structure that wins out. I wanted to, in terms of illustrating open systems theory and what open systems theory does to try to solve that problem, is that I wanted to talk about 2 organizational experiences. And it just so happens these 2 organizations were big engineering companies. By big engineering companies, I mean 50 to 100,000 people. So that's reasonably big. When you're organizing 50 to 100,000 people and you've got lots of engineers, you have lots of structure that you put in place, lots of org structures, lots of policies, lots of things that go on. And both of these organizations, they claim to be agile. And in fact, if you go to their websites, they'll have lots of stuff about agile on their websites. One of them was very much based around fitting agile within its stage gate type of mentality. It really wanted to pigeonhole engineers into, you have XYZ skills and you do ABC job, and you never go out of that square box until you earn a certification in the next thing, and then you can move out of that box and move into another box. And I was a member of a management team there that was trying to work in an agile fashion. And we were sort of doing a scrum of scrum things, and we were doing sprints and stand-ups and all sorts of stuff within the management team, which was absolutely sort of XYZ useless. And and it didn't feel like we were doing anything for, effectively we were the middle management that was implementing policies on top of the engineers and effectively slowing things down. The other more participative workplace that I want to talk about, almost an exactly identical engineering company working in the same industry and working on similar projects, we bid against each other, was a very much more participative workplace. There was a sort of bubble up of strategy from working level up to executive level. There was the idea that management teams were there to help support engineering teams. There was collaboration across solving problems all the way, up and down the organization. I mean, it still had a hierarchy, but it was a much more respectful place to work, a much more productive place. I happened to be in management teams where I saw productivity metrics, and I can tell you that company B, let's call the first one A and the second one B, was significantly more productive than company A. So, you know, the numbers were, you know, were supporting the participative workplace type of thing. Very much felt like a team of teams set up. And this all happened many years before I was introduced to open systems theory. And what I want to do in the next few slides is then reinterpret those two organizations, very different organizations, with open systems theory. I'm going to very briefly go through systems thinking, just to sort of try to do a bit of a level set. It's been around for a long, long time. The open system stuff actually started with a guy called von Bertalanffy in 1956, publishing a book on theory of open systems, but he was very much talking about biological systems. It was around the 70s, or the 50s and 60s, that people like Fred Emery, Eric Trist, then took some of these ideas, applied them into stuff they were learning in socio-technical systems in order to generate the body of knowledge that is now open systems theory. Systems thinking and systems practice is something that has been around for many, many years, many different varieties of it. So by talking about open systems theory and socio-technical systems, I'm not trying to cover any of the other pieces that are on this slide. They're all, you know, nice, interesting bodies of knowledge. One of the sort of buzzwords of Russell Ackoff, and he tells a story about a particular problem which had to do with conductors and drivers on the bus setup. And he tells the story about being unable to solve that problem until someone from the outside thought about actually moving the conductors in busy times off the buses and onto, you know, the pavement in order to handle issuing tickets outside of the bus. And he calls this, describes this as a classic case of dissolving the problem. I think that's one of the critical things of problem solving with system thinking, is that there are many ways you can solve and divert a problem, but that dissolving of the problem by thinking outside of the box, if you like, and thinking about the system and its interactions is a key part of system thinking. Anyway, socio-technical systems, spun off from systems thinking. It was Fred and Merrill Emery. They both happen to be Australian. Marilyn is still alive in Canberra. Fred died back in 1997. They used action research to research organizations, and action research is effectively a technique of researching by actually making changes within organizations, seeing the effect of those changes, using that to benchmark your theories, and considerably different to a lot of externally focused research where people research from outside the organization. Three things that I want to cover off very quickly are the discovery of the genotypical organizational design principles, DP1 and DP2, the two-stage model of active adaptation. I don't think we'll necessarily get to that, and the use of the 6 intrinsic motivators. They actually, all three of them go together in terms of helping you design an organization. The two design principles, DP1 and DP2, DP1 is pretty well the classic organization design principles that I saw in Company A, where we were very hierarchical, very box structured. It's also known as redundancy of parts. And the structure there is that effectively coordination and control and goal setting is outside of the team. And because of that, and people within the team are given parts of the task. It's this classic idea of, oh, look, I've got a Jira backlog. The product owner will give Jira tasks to the developers, Mark, you take yours, Erin, you take yours, etc. You all work on your task individually. And effectively someone is managing you and controlling what you do and organizing your goals. DP2 is a very different structure where you have the team as a whole comes together to organize their own goals, and they negotiate their goals relevant to the whole task. Sometimes you see this happening within agile teams, that there is more efficacy in order for the team to set its own goals and to sometimes mob and pair around the task. The management team is not there to be responsible for control and coordination. It's there more as another part of the organization, handling management tasks, having maybe some let's say obstacle removal, etc. Type of tasks. And that's sort of effectively the two organizational design principles that Fred Emery discovered. He discovered this through an exercise in longwall coal mining in the north of England, where teams of coal miners that were responsible for the whole of the mining exercise, rather than just picking one part and having to have one team hack at the coal face, another team to transport the coal down to the pit bottom, another team to take the coal up the shaft, etc. That's organizational design principle 2 that was instantiated there was incredibly successful at getting a more a productive coal mining. Then I would have to mention that there was a third design principle that was discovered a number of years later, which is that of laissez-faire. And laissez-faire is the situation where you effectively have no control. You're trying to do something that is DP2. You're trying to give people ownership of the task and ownership of the goal setting, but in the process, the organization is compromised, and you end up with this situation where managers try to say, oh no, it's up to you to set your own goals, but by the way, you have to do X, Y, Z, and at which point you get into this mixed mode, which Fred Emery called laissez-faire. So that's basically the two organizational design principles that I wanted to talk about. That's the core of OST. There's also an interface with the global environment and the task environment, which is incredibly important as part of the team being able to work within a changing environmental circumstance. And I think we can see this in a lot of our organizations, that there are global drivers that influence us. And then the third thing is the 6 criteria for productive work. I borrowed this of a Dave Whitney slide. He presented it at Agile Australia this year, which is that there's 3 principles: elbow room, continual learning, and variety, which are very much personal, where you have a balance between too little autonomy and you feel disempowered because you're told what to do, too much autonomy and you feel like you're rudderless, not being guided. So it has to be, in the middle, and the same with learning, and the same with variety. Yeah, too much variety and you're confused, too little variety and you're bored. Mutual support, respect, meaningfulness, desirable future are more team goals, where the more mutual respect you get, mutual support, the more meaning you have in your work, the more your work contributes towards a desirable future. These are intrinsic motivators as opposed to extrinsic motivators. And with those, and with the active adaptation to the environment and the DP2 organization, you end up with a more productive and more and a better place to work. And there's scientific evidence on that. There's actually been in the past, funnily enough, some Australian organizations that have adopted OST. Hopefully this has given you like a quick 15-minute intro. It's really hard to do OS2 justice in 15 minutes. If you go to this website, opensystemstheory.org, or you join the LinkedIn group there, and happy for these slides to be distributed so that you can see the links. So that was it as a presentation, about 15 minutes. Erwin, you're supposed to be...